It's of his.
I mean, like a French prison, but everyone speak. I think that's kind of like thing. Like it's probably a lot. She's
Hmm.
like Latin.
Yeah.
I'm guessing like Asians, and he probably uses a lot.
I looked it up. It was filmed in was a pretty cheap movie. I was reading this movie does, and you can tell.
Which this movie is really. I hate movies is day for that's
Yes, yeah.
very clearly filmed in the day. Filter on it. It's just a
Yeah, I agree, and like it's never convincing.
not as bad, which still is like in my mind I've ever seen in a movie.
That's watched that movie after, and they totally agreed. They were like scenes they had ever seen.
So a leg up of they beat a major X.
They totally did that.
That was actually the same year, I think, the year after.
I'm not sure,
But it's they vacations, and once they're like they end up crash or whatever onto like a different island. One of the other guys on the raft gets shark, and I'm seeing he's just like thrashing. It's just like this giant like he's covered in.
Movie. I personally kept on the shark a little long. Raft trip a little bit long. Shark at the same time because I feel like this kills the guy and then that's it.
Yeah, they could have called it.
Yeah, what's like that is kind of scary.
Maybe. Or exclamation point at the end.
Yeah. Maybe.
That guy died on camera for.
Yeah, no way. Into the movie.
It's fun. It's supposed to be this completely different, exactly the same as it looks like they shot it like feet down the shore. Yeah. And my interest in this movie.
Yeah, I seriously like we were pulling a lot out of this about not this movie because after the movie just like it is so and meandering. There's something interesting like lepers show up. They were to them. It's a very boring conversation.
Yeah, that one's very boring. Run into some island and Brown's character it's frustrating me a little bit about this. He is with like whatever these new like.
Yeah,
I legit think we'd like get to like this. I'm staying here for even again.
And it's so weird to go. We can't stay safe, and he's like, no, this is a weird like this man who just is willing to just stop.
Yeah, and it's like it's not away or in a different country. They're island over where they're.
Yeah,
Christopher George is like you're on the lam, like we can spot for any length of now. I'm good. I'm staying. He shows up, and then they like.
Exactly. I know something that's weird. No, I was gonna say this kind of goes into there's sex in this movie. I just thought it was funny. We watched this on in the comments. Did you happen to read it all?
I do comments for any video. You tell me.
People are really thanks for bringing this class. But there was at least 4 time stamped each Jim Brown has. One of them at this time. It just made me like, yeah, this is it. Timed.
Q Tarantino.
Oh, that was the feet. I had to do a classic foot joke.
Yeah.
But once again, agree. Not a lot happens. It's like them just rolling around.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Like everything kind of really blends. Like, and it's really hard for me specific scenes.
Yeah, actually, in the end, when they get, I ended the movie and I was like, I have to rewatch this over my head, and I was like, I could not watch this movie because it was that.
No, that last. At least they meet like people. I mean that. Not great conversation. Remember them going to leper into like a booby.
The booby trap was funny because booby trap that's obviously spiked.
Yeah, it's like he wants to go run to a full presentation of food, and he's like, "Look, they left it just framed.
The food right hanging from the tree."
Yeah. It's not like these bamboo. It's like
no,
like just dropped on you,
like a Looney Tunes cartoon.
An anvil dropping on your head.
Other than that,
I'm really having a hard time in the town. I mean, once again, like they're in, and Jim Brown's like, I'm in, like this is my home now, and they end up getting into
it's just Jim Brown. I'm gonna stay here. I found out, and then Chris George is interesting. Then seriously, like no, it's so dragged out. It's him hiding out. There's like a scene at the end.
Fireworks, like that's where like the credits roll.
And Jim Brown, I've seen a movie. Amount of time do interesting. It's like
I no surprises from either. Not one of my very good in my opinion. It's pretty boring.
It one of the worst, of course.
It wasn't unbearable. It's just my interest in. But I wanted to, like you said, it's just like movies too. So I was like, oh, it just didn't really have. I mean, like even Jim Brown, like in Black Gun earlier. Expecting a lot, I don't even think this was like. I feel like he's probably done a lot.
Exactly. So he kind of got but it's not the content. I guess a question behind the backstory of this. Martin Scorsese supposed to direct this movie.
Right.
And he's actually, it was kind of a mentor to, he offered him Boxcar Bertha. He would have elevated this movie or Bob flick.
I would have to. I mean, I can't. Honestly, a director could have made, like, something I would have found a little more director, but
no,
to give almost any other director.
And I mean, honestly, it's probably Will Whitney's fault. Been in Hollywood forever. Serials and Lone Rangers. It's just big movies coming out. It just came out as
Tropes we've heard. It's like you gotta have sex. He's in here.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta make it cheap too.
That's another Teenage Caveman is in hell movie.
I was gonna say, like, man, it's just like nuts, and like at a certain point, rewatch. I guess Teenage Caveman,
but you do at least get the elevates it a little bit.
True.
There's not really a good end.
Very true. Good parts of this movie
I look back on, and it's like I never even saw it.
True.
Yeah, it's boring. Okay, testing movies.
When the 80s came along, then he's like, "That's boobs," like
and then because which is a blast. So now, I mean, that producer where Sinine makes some weak stuff.
You take the good, you take the bad. I Escape from Devil's Island.
Oh, perfect. That is a beautiful. As you could. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, funny anecdote where Jim Brown's character raw, and
the whole time.
No, I had like the closed caption. Like, I like having subtitles. They just kidding. Like, we've established. They kept saying, like, I'm like a name, like, even back then.
Yeah.
But then LeBra.
That is pretty funny.
Translates to the bra.
You're right. Wow. Put that on IMDb, please.
I give you just a little bit of French.
Thank you. I will eventually know how to say things.
Yes.
For our great trip French B movies. Or like that piece of garbage little movie. Yeah, disgusting. To say it's easy to recommend from us. I think this one out.
Yeah, neither one of us recommend. There's probably other movies, so maybe if you're looking for, here's one you can skip.
Exactly.
We want to thank Jim Brown.
Rest in peace. Yeah,
made a lot of himself.
Last time we talk about him,
definitely not. I can already think of about, but for now, get back to programming. What are we going to talk about?
All right, Ryan. Tuesday, we're going to be talking about Jack from 1990, streaming over in Tubi.
Perfect. Can't wait.
Absolutely.
Terrific. Cannot wait. If you'd like to tell us over at driveinpodcast.com and at DIDF and check out the Patreon at patreon.com. But
next time.
Hello, welcome to Drive-In Double Feature Podcast. I'm Ryan.
I'm Nathan.
And this is the podcast where we talk about 2 movies a week every Tuesday and Thursday. But
keep going.
But before I get into anything at all, we are going to be talking about our Patreon over at patreon.com/drive-in-double-feature-podcast@gmail.com. It's just a little fun area. We have a couple of games, quizzes, just making fun of each other's tastes, just like 2 friends normally should do. But it's but it's only $5 a month. So if you choose to support us, we want to thank you again for supporting the Patreon. But if not, do not worry. It does not affect any regular content at all. So today we're going to be talking about 1973's I Escaped from Devil's Island, directed by William Whitney. And
what?
As you could have guessed, this is another Jim Brown movie.
Yes, yeah, we're back at it again with Jim Brown. So we don't need any long intros about Jim Brown.
No,
unless we want to reiterate.
But somebody who doesn't need any introduction whatsoever, who is another returning factor, Roger Corman.
Yeah, Roger's back.
Oh boy. I was, after watching that movie and I looked up who produced it, I was like, this is starting to make a lot of sense.
Oh yeah, I knew it going in actually.
I did not know at all.
Yeah, it is tied to Roger Corman. Because I only lightly looked it up, but yeah, on Wikipedia, on the side it says like Roger Corman, and then it's like, oh boy, and it fits a lot of the same, and we'll get into that. Fits a lot of the moldings of his movies.
Yeah, so I mean, as you know, Roger Corman is really famous for his original ideas, and this movie is no exception whatsoever.
Yeah.
No, it is very much a rip-off movie because at the time they were making the movie Papillon, starring Steve McQueen and Dustin Hoffman. It's one of those movies where it's like an island prison type of movie, inescapable, prisoners trying to escape, that type of thing. Yeah. And Roger Corman was like, let's do that. And they got Jim Brown to do it. And
they got it out even earlier than the movie anyway. This movie got sued because of it. They didn't win. The producers of Papillon did not win that lawsuit, but still, that is messed up.
And honestly, I mean, like Papillon, like they probably they wouldn't have had to even acknowledge this movie, and they still would have beaten it. So I mean,
that's true.
I mean, and then this movie is very light on budget and very light on plot too, I will say.
Yes, yeah. Well, before we hop into it, have you seen Papillon?
I did. It's a really great movie.
Yeah, I've heard it's really good. I've never seen it. I want to see. It's actually written by Dalton Trumbo, which is a really cool thing. But does just like a light thing, does this movie rip off of that really heavily? Is it very similar?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there might be. I mean, there are island prisons, that type of thing, but I don't really feel like it's. I mean, it's been a minute since I've seen Papillon, but like from what I remember, it's not that similar.
Yeah. No. Okay. Like, I mean, I guess just concept wise, right? Because there's no way they'd seen the movie. I think Papillon's based off a book, so maybe that's what it is.
Like Papillon is definitely like an epic where it takes place like at a certain point. It goes on for years.
Gotcha. Okay.
And Steve McQueen, you could like see Steve McQueen and Dustin Hoffman's characters like getting old.
Gotcha. That's cool. I that's a movie I really need to see. But instead I watched I Escaped from Devil's Island.
Well,
story of my life. Yeah, good thing. Get me started.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's mainly the relationship, I guess, between Jim Brown's character and Chris George, I think his name is. Is that
Christopher George. Yeah,
Christopher George. Like there are two characters about how they interact. Like Jim Brown, he's like a murderer, I guess, and Christopher George is a political prisoner. He's very much a communist.
Yes,
and they kind of build up a bond together. And Jim Brown is like, "Hey, we're gonna break off of this island." And Christopher George is like, "No, I want to leave the honest way. I want to get a political pardon." And and I'm like, dude, like this is not the place. Like you're on an island. Like nobody's expecting you to come home. Like
no, nobody's gonna get you that pardon. I promise you. From like the worst prison ever.
Yeah, it's very much like a. So I thought this movie was mainly going to be, I guess, more in line with Papillon, where it shows like their lives on this prison, and then like maybe like the finale was going to be like the big escape from the prison.
Kind of like Escape from Alcatraz as well.
That's kind of what I was imagining in my head, but that they escaped the prison
about 30 minutes in, right?
Yeah, pretty early into this movie, like a third into it. So it's that doesn't affect it, but like some of the earlier parts, actually, like I actually did like the scenes on the prison. Like I thought those were like the most entertaining parts of the movie, where it shows like the abusive guards, where Jim Brown he's like a butcher at the prison, and there's like one guard that like, and another guard that's like, "Oh yeah, well my prisoner could beat up your prisoner," and he tells Jim Brown like, "If you don't beat him, if you don't kill him, like I'm gonna break your back or whatever." And I'm like, well, he's gonna die regardless. So who cares if he doesn't win? Like,
exactly.
He's gonna be dead either way. But yeah, Jim Brown like just takes that one prisoner and just throws him on his back and snaps the guy's back.
Yep. Yeah. And I totally agree. I think the prison stuff is the better part of the movie. Just like you said, I think the biggest issue with this movie for me, very light on plot. Like even the prison stuff, it's at least interesting, and I like some of the characters, but this movie's slow for an hour 30-minute movie. It is a drag.
It's a pretty big drag, and overall I can say I really wasn't that big of a fan of it.
I didn't like it. I really like, and I feel bad because I've seen a lot of good stuff about this movie. Tarantino really loves this movie, but you can't trust Tarantino's opinion ever. So
no, because he says it's like, oh, there's these big complex characters, and I love this movie, and I'm like, I don't see what you're talking about here, but I mean,
I get where he's coming from one element. There is a gay gang in this movie that's part of the prison, and there's one character, Jojo, who's gay in this, and he is a character with a little more depth than I feel like a lot of gay characters would get in early 1970s.
Yeah, I mean, I do like some of the plots they had where it, like Jim Brown and the Jojo were trying to make a raft. So, but anytime anyone would come by, they would like pretend like they're making out, right, and like, oh, we're hiding, like he right, we're trying to have this little affair.
We're just trying to make some love. Oh, I see you got yourself a fancy boy.
Yeah,
I think he says, yeah.
But I mean, but they're trying to escape, and like one other guy wants to in on this. He's like, yeah, well, if you're getting out of here, I want to get out of here too. And for some reason, like Christopher George does not want to leave this island, like I said. But like I said, for some reason, Jim Brown is like adamant, like, no, you're coming with me.
Yeah, he has to have this guy with him. He couldn't just be like, okay, well, tough luck. You're gonna have to stay on the island, and
considering that it's a raft and it has a very finite amount of space, it's not like they're traveling out on like a boat or anything. It's like a man-made raft that they use, like using cow skin, like, and they're using like cow skin and like to use like the flow and bamboo as a bed. But And it's even funnier now that I say that, because within like right away of getting on this raft, it starts sinking because there's too many people on the raft.
It's so silly. Like they escape, and that raft just disintegrates immediately, and they're just left floating in the water. If he would have just left the guy who didn't want to go with him behind, they would have been fine.
Oh yeah, because like the guy, he's all like his hands are tied up and everything. He's like, "Come on, get out of here!" He's like, "I'm taking you with me." Oh, I did like. Oh, one other thing I want to say about the prison scene was, like one guard's trying to get Chris George's character to break, and he wants him to like rat out on one of his friends, and he's like, "I'm not doing that," and he's but anyway, like some of the other guards come by and they're like, and they notice that this guard is kind of like going rogue and like trying to tell him what to do. And like the warden's like, we can't let any of the prisoners become guards, but we can let one of the guards become a prisoner.
Yeah, I did like that, and it zooms in on his face, just sweating. I did like that.
But what I thought too is like, I thought that guard was like going to become like their friend, or like they're going to team up.
No.
Instead, like when they rescue Christopher George, they murder that guard like as he's held captive. Like they're just like, they just full on kill him. Like
they don't care. That is pretty funny. I'm talking about it right now. That is one thing that's very common with Corman is this is kind of unrelated to that, but like tropical landscapes, right? Like I feel like we've covered multiple of his movies that are all about like tropical areas, because this takes place on an island, and then later they go to like a country full of like trees